I've been camping at the end of the July. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome to it. Today I am finally giving you my July wrap up. It's later than I normally would do it, but I went camping at the end of July, so I didn't get a chance to film anything, and also I still had a few books that I was still reading and I wanted to finish them before I did this. But we're finally here. I can finally share with you what I have read for July, and then I can finally then share my August TBR, since that's not gone up either. But yeah, with further ado, let's get straight into the video and see what books I have read for July. I've read 26 books. That sounds really weird. I had more than that on my TBR. There was, I think, over 30. I was participating in 2 readathons. I was participating in Path or Pathian, which was a Myth Takes readathon. That was for the whole of July. And I also was participating in Olympics-a-thon, which was the end of July through to the 8th of August, which is still going on now. However, I have finished those books. I actually read books for Olympics-a-thon. I actually completed the 5 books that I said I was going to read. I'm very happy about that. I've completed a readathon. I didn't complete Path or Pathian because, well, I read 2 books for that. Yeah, I think I read 2 books for that, but I wasn't in a mood for any of my fantasy. I just wasn't in a mood for fantasy this month, and I had a lot of books that were fantasy for that. I couldn't be bothered to change it around and get other books because a lot of the prompts fitted more fantasy than anything else. So I didn't participate in it. I read 2 and that was it. And I was just like, I can't be bothered. I've got other books to do. And July has been a bit of an up and down month, if I'm going to be honest. So the beginning of July, I came down with one of my worst migraines I've had so far. I suffer with them. I get them like every few months. But I was knocked out for 3 days with this migraine. I couldn't even eat properly because just the sound of chewing really set my head off. So the first 3 days I did absolutely nothing apart from watch stuff on Netflix. I actually started and finished 2 series, which is not like me. The only ever series I have completely started and finished is all of the Shadowhunters ones, and that took me a while. But yeah, I managed to watch 2 series because that's all I could do. And I had to have the brightness really down, like everything had to be dark. So that happened. And now when I finally felt better and was like, oh, I'm in a mood for reading, I then had my first proper EMDR therapy, which was I went through that actual therapy, not talking about things and all that. I assumed that on that Thursday, I was just practicing what I had to do and just use something that wasn't my trauma, but use something so I could practice things. But no, my counsellor put me straight into the deep end. I had to think of my trauma and then go through all the emotions and all that, and it was really good, don't get me wrong, but you know, that 90 minutes of doing that, of going through all different emotions, some nasty, it did slowly start getting good because I remembered other things. But by the time my session ended, I was in an absolute emotional state. I mentally was drained. I just felt blah. And so for the rest of that week, I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to read. I didn't want to do anything apart from just watch stuff on Netflix or chill with my daughter. Excuse me. So for the first week of July, I did absolutely no reading, which was annoying because obviously I had a lot of books I needed to read and that put me back. However, I did start reading, and I'm going to be totally honest, I was in a fluffy, easy read, and shock horror, your girl actually read quite a lot of romance. Yeah, not like me, but I was in that mood and it really helped. So I managed to read 26 books. I only completed 1 readathon. I don't care. I still read quite a lot of books, and I had a very good month in regards to my reads. I had a hell of a lot of 5 stars and 4 stars and a few low ones. but mainly 5-star reads. So I am very, very, very impressed. So let's get into the books and go from there. So first up is all of the tour books. I'm going to go with all of the tour books first because it's easier. So the first book, I've done it in rating order as well, is Our Own Correspondent by James Hereward Ward. I gave this 3.5 stars. I went into this giving it a chance. It was, I would say, very historical fiction, sort of modernised, but it was very focused on politics and war, which is not something I really like in books. Like, I don't mind reading books that focus the war, but not political wise. I like it more as in how they dealt with like how they dealt with bombs, how they dealt with the camps and stuff like that. Not so much the politics side of the war, which is what this focused on. I gave it a chance. The writing is brilliant. Like, I can't fault the writing. For a debut, I think it's a heck of a good book as a debut. Just for me, I'm not keen on politics in with the war, and for that it just was like I didn't enjoy it as much. So that was 3.5 stars. And then these next 2 books were 4 stars, but they're on my Kindle. So first up was Cuts That Cure, which was like a psychological thriller, possibly horror, kind of. It was dark. It was dark. So basically we have the main character is like a ER doctor. He's a surgeon, things like that, and he has had enough, and so like he had his last day as like him, and then he left. He obviously, it was his last day. Basically he had to deal with this little boy who had quite a nasty burns, like 3rd-degree burns, like very not good burns, and they looked him over, and they could tell that this was neglect, that this was abuse, and they went through so this boy had been in hospital a lot with like broken bones and all that, and like when they did x-rays and stuff just to check him all over and everything, because apparently he fell in a bath, it showed that there were a lot of broken bones that healed on their own but like not properly, and obviously I think they've all been trained to know what's neglect and what's an accident. So social services came and got involved, but like they were believing the parents, because the parents were really like bringing out like a full-on sob story, and he flipped. So he flipped out at the parents saying, "You don't deserve children," blah blah blah. He then smashed up their car, everything like that. Along that there is a sue on him, but he just goes down in a really downward spiral. He's got lots of debt and stuff like that, and he ends up meeting someone, and basically they want him to I don't know how to explain it. Like, you know, you can get like the black market organs where you get people's organs and all that thing for money and stuff like that. It was sort of like that, but like body parts as well. And so he did that, and yeah, it was dark. It was good. It was dark. It didn't there are bits where I got very confused with it. I was a bit like and the ending I kind of liked and I didn't like, so I've given it 4 stars, but it was extremely dark and I absolutely loved the darkness. I just thought, whoo, this is good. Just how the person thought of it, like honestly they either were on high end drugs and were tripping and thought this bizarreness, or they're twisted or something. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was 4 stars. And then another 4 stars was Raina's Sacrifice, which is book 3 of the series. I finally actually read book 1 and book 2, so I understood the whole story, because I read book 2 and didn't have time to read book 1, so I liked the story, but I obviously got a little bit confused because I hadn't read the first story, so I did it. Yeah, it's good. It's very YA, and I do like YA of how quick it is, but this was sort of a little bit young for me. But it was good, it was enjoyable. It's not my absolute favourite, like I wouldn't probably reread the books again, but it's very There's a lot of magical bits in and lots of like things like that that I really love. There's a lot of characters and I get confused who's who. But yeah, it's still, in regards to plot wise, I thought it was good. That was 4 stars. And then the rest of the books that I've got are all 5 stars. So yeah. First we've got The Watchman by Rob Parker. This is a Ben Bracken thriller, which I'm not sure whether it's the first book in a series or not. I can't remember now, but it sort of is more standalone from what the Talk Spot was. Basically, we follow Ben, who used to be in the army. He's got a different name, so he wasn't called Ben. He's changed his name, so that was that. An old army friend of his said that he had one last mission for him, and it was to basically pick up this envelope from New York and come back and hand it to him. Basically, long story cut short, there was a lot of this envelope basically has a lot of things in it that could change the world, kind of things. He goes to New York and he goes and gets this envelope. He needs to meet this person and blah blah blah, and they're not meant to open the envelope, but they both decide to do it because they're being asked to do this. The other person was asked to do this by his granddad. Obviously Ben was done it by an old friend, and he wanted to know why he had to go all the way over there instead of being, because he's a family man. He's like struggling to be a family man because of his job and all that, because he's in a job, he's not in the army anymore, but he's in some sort of like more intelligent sort of job wise, so he's not home all the time. So he wanted to know what he was risking his family for and blah blah blah. They opened it up and it was I can't remember what was written on it, but it wasn't what it was meant to be in there. Basically it's like haha something. So someone had swapped the envelope. So at first Ben thought it was a bloke, and the bloke said, "I'm not opened it. I literally got it sent to me by my granddad." And well, no, his granddad sent it to like the secretary, and the secretary sent it to him. So they went to go and find his secretary, and as they were doing this, these big burly biker men who were like gang members started shooting up wanting the envelope and all that, even though this envelope has nothing. So there's a whole thing of people after this envelope. So it's not as, straightforward, have this envelope, go home. There's lots of gangs trying to get it. It turns out that there is someone that they're very close to actually is a bad guy and blah blah blah. It's really good. It was really good. It gave me James Patterson vibes. James Patterson, one of his books, had a book about it was, I think, more a package, and it turned out to have diamonds in it, but it was very similar to this with regards to loads of people trying to get it. It also was involved with like a terrorist group and stuff like that. So this felt very James Patterson. So I enjoyed it because it gave me that vibe. And James Patterson is one of my favourite thrillers, like authors. So yeah, that was very good. 5 stars. The rest of these are all 5 stars. So I'm not going to keep saying 5 stars. So then we had The Mix Up by Holly McCulloch. I don't know if I said that right. I love this. This was so good. So basically we follow Paige, who is a wedding cake baker. She is in a bad place. She got dumped by her boyfriend, of like a long-term boyfriend, who she assumed they were going to get married and have a future and all that. So he dumped her at the same time when some drama happened with her family, and so the people that she's trusted have really lost her trust, and so she's in quite a bad place. And she's trying to find like a new boyfriend to get over her ex and blah blah blah, but she's failing because they're all just bleh. And to make matters worse, she has an appointment of a new new wedding couple, and it turned out that it was her ex-boyfriend and his new fiance, and basically he sort of like torments her and blah blah blah, and he decides that he wants her to make his wedding cake, but he's also sort of being a bit of an arsehole and like, yeah, sort of giving Paige very mixed signals. Like it sounds like he hasn't got over her sort of thing, but I think he's just being an arsehole really. But then she goes to a party that her friend was hosting, and a friend said, look, let your hair down and all this, I can give you some fun, no strings attached. And so basically tells her to look for a guy with a black top. She ends up finding two, and she spoke to one, and then by accident she fell over him and spilt his drink. Basically, she couldn't tell which one was which because they both had black tops, but then the light caught one of the other guys and it turned it into purple. So she went for this one who definitely had a black top that she spilled a drink on, who is called Noah. So they end up drinking, they end up dancing, they end up making out, they end up going back to Noah's place, they sleep together, and she then tried to do the walk of shame. So she went to the toilet and all that, blah blah blah, and as she was leaving, Noah was up saying, you're leaving so soon, I haven't got your number, blah blah blah, and she ends up making breakfast for him and him cleaning up. It was a very, very strange thing, and they end up deciding to have a bit of fun and all that, but obviously feelings get attached and all that. But it also turns out that it's the wrong guy. It was meant to be this other guy, but she chose Noah and all that. It's very good. There's a lot of baking reference, you know, there's also a little bit of like with an ex-boyfriend and stuff like that. But yeah, I just loved it. It was so funny. It was just very feel good, and I could not help shipping Paige and Noah from the start. Like, it was just lovely. So yeah, love that. Next up we have I thought this was middle grade, but I think this is YA, because like more like teenagers sort of YA rather than the upper class YA, which is Rory Hobble and the Voyage to Haligogan by Maximilian Hawker. This is a sci-fi thriller, I would say, and I love this. You know me, I'm slowly getting into sci-fi. I struggle a lot with like sci-fi terms and all that, so this was easy. I don't know whether because it was for teenagers that it made it easy or what, but basically we follow Rory, who has OCD, and I love the fact that his OCD wasn't your typical OCD that I know, like, which is the, you know, like obsessive over cleaning and stuff like that. His OCD is actually these really nasty thoughts, and he constantly has them, and it's like very controlling and stuff like that. Like, it's a different kind of OCD, and I was just like, oh, I've learned something new, because to me OCD is really like obsessive cleanliness stuff, but it's not. It can be anything, and for Rory's case is he's got these obsessive thoughts that keep going on. He keeps thinking the worst, you know, he won't do anything because of these thoughts, and it was a really interesting insight of that type of OCD. And I love the fact that this book very much gives young voices like to know that they're not on their own, because a lot of like that you had a lot of there was a lot of I can't play it. Yeah, at the front there was a lot of kids reviews on there. Where is it? Freya, age 13. One of the most unique children's novels I've ever read. Seeing yourself represented in books is so rare, and there are a lot of people and children who would benefit from reading this. Which I felt very, like, you know, I don't suffer that, but I felt like it was that, you know, a lot of children in Rory's shoes would actually feel quite, oh, they are normal, it's not just them, it's other people, blah blah blah. But yeah, so he's got OCD. He lives with his mum. I wouldn't say she's abusive in the way that she hits him or anything like that, but she certainly neglects him. She's got a lot of mental health problems. She's been told to have these medications and she doesn't take it. I think when she takes it, she's not so depressed and like low. Like, I think she's a complete different person. She can't cope with Rory's OCD, so a lot of social workers get involved. She doesn't like these social workers because she thinks they're going to take Rory away from her, so she's like very scared of that. But in my opinion, when I was reading it, I kind of felt like the social workers should take Rory away from her, because she doesn't feed him, she doesn't like do anything. You know, they live in a one bedroom flat, so they have to share a bedroom when he's like, you know, a teenager. Like, that doesn't, you know, that's not good. You know, she's not very, like, she's not abusive, like where you have abusive parents who hit their children non-stop, but she will scream at him, she'll throw things at him, like missing him and so that. So she's very, and she neglects her son, and in some ways there is abuse in there emotionally, I would say, but not fully physically. Either way, it's not nice. But Rory gets a new social worker, who I've forgotten her name now. Limmy. She's like very strange and weird, but they have a bond. And basically, Limmy tells him one night to keep an eye on his mum, because there's these new, a lot of like stars reappeared, but then he noticed actually these weren't stars, they looked like something out of the ordinary. And then the news the following day said that there looks like there are spaceships. So Rory got excited because he's very thoroughly interested in like planets and like other living things going on there. So we got excited, but then it turns out that these spaceships have got aliens, and then this bloke, or not bloke, this like creature alien thing kidnaps his mum. Not sure why at the time, but as you get into the book it explains things. And so Rory ends up finding out that Limmy is like an undercover sort of, she's human, but she lives up in the planets to make sure that the Earth do not know about aliens and things like that they're protecting the planets and stuff like that. So, and anyway, she said like, you need to come with me, we need to go and get your mum. So then they go through this whole finding his mum in the planets, all of that, big massive spaceships. But on top of that, you have an alien whale. That's only how I can describe it. An alien whale called Gary who farts. I loved it. I loved this. It was brilliant. We then had Life at the End of the Tunnel by Christina Black. This is a memoir about domestic abuse. It's a very hard-hitting, very sad book, but I appreciated it. It is definitely, read the trigger warnings for this, but it's not really wrong to say I enjoyed this, because obviously this is someone's life that she went through. But I just have so much respect for Christina to keep going through all the crap she went through. Like, she went through a lot. It wasn't just one or two things, she went through a dozen things, and she came out of it strong, standing tall, and not letting it define her. And for me, if I went through her stuff, like if it happened like the third time, I'd be like, no, and not want to live. So I have utmost respect for her, and the fact that she wrote something so honest, and you could tell it was quite raw for her as well. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I think everyone should read it, but just be mindful of the trigger warnings, it might trigger you. Then we had this other memoir, Small on Motherhoods by Claire Lynch. This is about her and her wife. What's her wife's name again? I can't remember now. I read it so long ago. I can't remember. It's about her and her wife. It's about fertility. It's about being lesbians, and how on birth certificates it's not mother, it's mother and partner. Like, they don't have it like mother, father. It's always mother and partner. It's never like that. So it's still not inclusive in regards to the same sex. It's about infertility. It's about going through fertility treatment and miscarriages, and then hope on finally getting a child. There are some really hilarious moments, there's some really sad moments. I had a few sobs over this, but it's just so important, so raw, and I really appreciated the honesty. And I think a lot of people, a lot of women will very much find this book helpful for them, especially ones who have going through infertility, going through fertility treatments, and also queer parents as well. I think would benefit from this. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. We also, to go on with non-fiction and memoirs, it was Elizabeth and Margaret, The Intimate World of Windsor's Sister by Andrew Morton. I really enjoyed this. I read this like on and off, so I read it throughout the month. I didn't read it in one go, I just couldn't do it. But it was very much gave me the Crown vibes. Like, I love the Crown, and this is what I felt like it. I loved how honest it was, and I really liked all the pictures. Like, we had a lot of pictures, so it was quite nice to see actually what they looked like and everything. That it was just a very raw account, and it makes you really appreciate both the sisters, but for me particularly Margaret, because her and Elizabeth are so close, and then when Elizabeth got crowned, it sort of everything changed and they couldn't be close, and that was a struggle for Margaret. And you know, a lot of people just think she's a party girl and, you know, blah blah blah, but actually it was her lashing out because she lost in some ways the closeness of a sister. That, you know, for Elizabeth it was, you know, the crown first and family second. So yeah, it was really interesting to get their accounts, and I just felt I sort of understood Margaret more. So yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I recommend everyone to read it. And a nasty was This Fragile Earth by Susanna Wise. This is a climate dystopian book. I really loved it. It was amazing. Like, it really makes you think this could happen, and it's scary that actually this could happen. And like in some bits there are starting to happen here, like with drones and things like that. And you know, I don't want to go into it because I will spoil it, but it was thoroughly good. I was hooked. I read this in a day. I could not put it down, and it excited me, and it also scared me because I thought, oh my god, this could really happen. But yeah, I recommend everyone to read this, and this is certainly going to be a reread for me as well, just because I think rereading it again I might find other bits and bobs. And then we're going to go to the books I read just for me or from my TBR game. I didn't complete my TBR game books, so I had a few prompts from them that I didn't complete, but I'm not punishing myself for August purely because of what went on in July, how up and down I was, and I just think that's not fair on me when I was struggling mentally wise and I wasn't feeling well. And so with that, it changed the reading that I wanted to do. So first up was a listen along I participated in with Tandem Collective. That was Reputation by Lex Crochet. I gave that 3.5 stars. It was Regency, it was historical fiction Regency era with a modern twist. So they said in like what the background they would say, it was very Mean Girls / Bridgerton / Jane Austen / a bit of Fleabag. It sounded really good, and I thought, oh, this is going to be really interesting. But for me, I actually didn't like the modernisation of it. You know, it focuses more on drinking, drugs, sex before marriage. To me, it didn't have a lot of the courting that I love in historical fiction, specifically historical romance. I just didn't care for any of the characters. Like Georgiana, I understand why she's the way she is. She wants to be accepted. She wants to have friends. She's been left by her family. She's been sent to her aunt and uncle who are more stricter because they haven't had children, and her parents didn't overly care about her, so they were like very blah 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 blah. I felt for her, but I just didn't like her attitude. Like, there were a lot of people trying to be nice to her and be friends with her and all that, and because they weren't popular or had that social scene, she was mean to them. I just, like, it did have that feel of Mean Girls, but I just didn't like her. I didn't care for the part, like, the actual partying, not the actual balls or anything like that. I didn't care for the drugs. I didn't care for Frances, which is like the friend she sort of made. I wouldn't say they were friends. It was just, I didn't like it. For me, if you're going to do a historical romance, actually have it historical, have the courting, have the balls, have like the slow burn romance. Like, it just, to me, I don't think that kind of stuff needs to be modernised, in my opinion. I appreciated it, and the writing was brilliant and the plot was good, but the first half was slow for me. The second half picked up, especially when there was a romance bit. I did quite like the Mean Girls and Jane Austen quotes that were sort of there, but no, it wasn't for me. And I also struggled with actually just listening to the audiobook itself. I had to end up listening to it and reading it on my Kindle because I was just not focusing properly. I really did appreciate who did the audiobook, which was Bessie, who is Prudence in Bridgerton, so she did all of the different characters' voices, which I felt was really handy. But yeah, it just wasn't my vibe, unfortunately. And then we're going on to 4-star books. So the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. I have watched this film numerous times, finally read the book. I preferred the film. I really did appreciate the letters, which we got more of in this than what you did in the movie. I also like learning a bit more about how Guernsey coped with the Germans living there and camping there. Like, where the Germans were attacking everywhere else, Guernsey, they actually took over to live and camp there and like strategize everything else. But obviously they had rules with the Guernsey people, like they had to give them all their food, stuff to do with farm animals and stuff like that. Like, so that was very interesting, and it went more into depth in this book than it does in the movie. I also liked the fact that you've got not just Dorsey but all of the other society characters chatting and explaining their opinions on how it was like in the war. And also I really like the fact that Elizabeth, who sort of gets mentioned in the movie, but in Elizabeth in the book you actually learn who she is, how she got to this predicament, which then sort of made things worse, to then her sheltering a boy that escaped from camp, to then her being sent to a camp, but along the way she goes missing, she never went to the camp, so everyone didn't know what happened to her. And obviously you, in the movie and in the book, you find out, but I felt that in a book it explained a bit more, which I really liked. But I just loved the movie more in regards to actually the more, I think, with Juliet and Dorsey, because they had romance in the movie, as in here you didn't get it much, and the ending was a bit naff. But still 4 stars. I did enjoy it. Also read Nick and Charlie by Alice Oseman. I love the Heartstopper books. I enjoyed this, but it didn't give me the Heartstopper vibes. Like with Heartstopper, it was approached with a lot of rep, you know, about coming out, about mental health, anorexia, all these different things, being true to yourself. And this more just focused on that Nick's leaving for university and Charlie's left behind, he'll be going into 6th form, and it's just sort of more focusing on that. Like, it was alright, but I liked the fact that with Heartstoppers you had a lot of important topics, which I really appreciated. This to me was just a bit, and I felt a little bit far-fetched as well. I just thought, would people actually stay together when someone's leaving for university, sort of thing. I'm a pessimist when it comes to romance, so I just felt some of this was far-fetched, but it was still lovely to dive into 2 of my favourite characters. I also got The Book Ninja by Ali Berg and Michelle Callas. I really enjoyed this. The only reason why this isn't a 5-star is because there was 2 lots of cheating, and I do not condone it. I don't like it, and I didn't like how the book was portrayed, that these 2 times of cheating, that one wasn't as bad, but the other one was full-blown an affair, and the book made it sort of like, oh, it's fine, it's forgiven, you know, it was just a moment. And I don't agree with that, so that's why I didn't get 5 stars. But I absolutely love that this was main backdrop was in a bookstore, and that it focused on books and her trying to find a boyfriend through books. So I love that. I wish they didn't have the cheating side of things, and this would have been a 5-star for me. Then we had another romance, Love and Rumours, which is a Summer Sister series, which is book 1 by Jean Oram. I got this from the charity shop, and I love this. This was smutty, this was hilarious. It just didn't have the wow factor for me, but I feel like the series probably would continue and might get better, so I am thinking about possibly getting book 2 and book 3, which focuses on the sisters, but I feel like it will also focus on these 2 characters in the next books as well. It just didn't have the wow factor, but it was still really enjoyable, and it was very smutty. And then on to 5-star reads. So first up, which was on my Kindle, I read A Touch of Darkness. This was just a mood read. I thought, I'm in a mood to read it. It was amazing. I love Hades and Persephone's retellings. I read Tempting Hades for a retelling readathon I did. I'll tag the vlog down of that. But I loved it, and I loved this retelling because it was modern Greece. It felt very much like it was based in New York City. It was very modern, up-to-date sort of thing. It was sort of enemies to lovers, which I really do love that trope. It was also her coming into her powers and standing up to her mother, and yeah, I absolutely loved it. I think everyone should read it, and I've officially got the second and third book, and I'm going to be binge reading them because I need to know what happens. And yeah, it was just fabulous. The rest of these books are all 5 stars. I'm just going to breeze through them because we've been here a while. I read We Should All Be Feminists by Shimanda Ngozi Adichie, I think I said that right. Little pocket power feminist book. Loved it. A lot of things on here I really appreciated. A lot of things here I actually do myself, and it really did make me open my eyes of how to shape my daughter and all that. I pretty much dog-eared a lot of these pages. I really enjoyed this. Then Air of Fire by Sarah J Maas. This is book 3 of the Throne of Glass series, which is my mass-along read-along that I'm doing with some of my book club members. 5 stars. We know this because I love this series. I love the fact that we have got I actually haven't finished. I'm halfway through, but I'm going to finish it today, and I know it's 5 stars because I'm already giving it 5 stars already, and that just for the first half I read. I love that we've got Rowan, and we've got Saoirse, and we've got Manon and Maeve, and then we've got the old characters. Like, Manon is a badass. Like, I cannot work out whether she's a good witch or a bad witch, where she is in that side of things, but she's amazing. And Ronan is just like, I know he's Selena's or Eileen's love interest. I do know the background of Throne of Glass because I've read so many reviews and seen so much fan art. So I know sort of that they're a love interest, but it's very interesting. Like, they're certainly enemies at the moment, and it's just very tense, and he's a dick, but I really like him. It's very interesting to get into Dorian with his magic, and Saoirse's sort of his new love interest, and Chaol has become like a rebel spy, so I'm really interested in his story because that's very interesting. But yeah, the first half that I read, I'm loving it, and I know I'm going to continue loving it because it's starting to really, really pick up now. Next is Blackout, which is love stories glow when the lights go out. It's just like a lot of short love stories which all interlink. I love this. Absolutely love this. I'm not going to go into this story. I'm just going to say that everyone needs to read this. It is own voices, Black Lives Matters, full on pretty much saying that black people deserve love. They deserve, normal lives, not to have racism or, white people killing them, things like that. It was beautiful. I loved every single bit of this. It's beautiful. Everyone needs to read it. Everyone needs to read it. Then I read another Own Lives book, Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds, illustrated by Chris Priestley. I love this. I bawled my eyes out. It took me a while to understand the ending, and I had to actually explain to my mum what happened for her to explain it to me, because I had one inkling and I wasn't sure where I was like. And when I explained it to my mum said, no, that's what I think too. I'm shocked if that is actually how it ended, but it was just so... It was wonderful. It was written brilliantly. It was so well done, so cleverly done. I felt the illustrations really brought it out too, and it was quite upsetting, and I think everyone should read it too. Then I read this book, which I have put off and never wanted to read because I didn't get the hype. I get the hype now, and I can't believe it's taken me this long to read it. This is by far one of my favourite, this and The Crossing is by far my favourite books of this year so far. Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. Amazing. I blubbed my eyes out in the last 2 stories because it was too sad, and I was like, oh no. I think this is so cleverly done, and I get the hype when I wrote my review, which was a very long review, when I saw that a lot of people gave this 1 stars or DNF'd it, I sat there thinking, what the fuck have you been reading? Because this is fantastic. If you haven't read it so far, read it. And if you have read it, tell me whether you loved it as much as I did. And if you didn't, what did you read? This was amazing. It was amazing. It was sad. It was hope. It was joy. It was just so cleverly done. Like, how they thought of this plot was amazing. I love this. I love this. My favourite book so far. Yeah, I'm glad I finally read it. Then I read Secret Seaside Escape. This was actually a prompt where my mum had to pick me a book, so she picked me this because it was, she said, more of a standalone Heidi Swain book. I probably will say that Heidi Swain is my favourite romance author. This was an easy 5 stars. It was just so lovely. It was such a summer read. It was so feel good. I couldn't stop laughing and smiling. It was just such a feel good book, and it was actually the first book I read when I had the whole week of not doing anything. This was the first book I read, and I'm glad I did because it really got me out of my headspace. And yeah, I loved it. I love Heidi Swain. I can't fault her books. Then I read Running with Lions. Shocked by this because it is a sports romance and I'm not interested in sport books, but this was done so cleverly. It was very coming of age. It was being true to who you are, all of that malarkey. The romance was lovely. It was sort of enemies to lovers, which again, as you can tell, is my favourite trope. I love this. Everyone needs to read it. Then I finally read Red, White and Royal Blue. This was another mood read. It wasn't on my TBR, but I fancied more romance, specifically queer romance, because I'm really shipping it at the minute. And this is my new baby. I love this so much. I get the hype now, and yeah, I'm not going to go into it. I love it. I love these 2 characters. I want them to be my best friends, and yeah, I'm certainly going to be buying Casey's new book because I love the way she writes. Then I finally read I Love You Say Moshi. It took me ages to read this, but I finally finished it. Loved this too. I loved that it was set in Japan. I loved the Japanese culture. I loved all of the Japanese food that was mentioned. I'm thoroughly interested in trying mochi. I loved our 2 characters, Kimi and Akika, and got another coming of age story, learning who you are, being true to yourself, and sort of rekindling family and things like that. I just loved it. I loved it. I loved it. And I really am interested in Japanese culture. So if you've got any books that do talk a lot about Japanese culture and like Japan or other areas, Japanese food, please give me recommendations because I love it. And then finally, Sick Kids in Love, which was my book club pick. Absolutely loved this so much. So much. I've done a vlog, so I'll tag the vlog in with all my thoughts on that, but read it. This is such a good rep for chronic illnesses, and it really resonated to me for someone who's got chronic illness herself. I might not have exactly what these 2 characters had, but still the things that were mentioned really resonated with me. I got quite emotional a few times just because of how true it was for me. I really understood our main character, is it Isabel? Yeah, Isabel, and like the reasons behind like her story. And yeah, her and Sasha are just a lovely couple. They just remind me of like an old married couple that have been together for years and years and years. That's what they reminded me of. But yeah, recommend everyone to read this, especially for chronic illness rep. For people who've got chronic illnesses, this will be very like understandable, but for people who don't, I think this is very good for you to open your eyes at how chronic illness people cope with, and if you've got anyone in the family, how you can be there for them without being condescending and not nice. So yeah, recommend that. So yeah, they're the books. That's a lot of books to get through. I'm sorry this is a very long video, but if you've read any of the books, put them down in the comments, let me know your thoughts on them, or if you fancy reading any of the books that I've mentioned and want to hear more about my thoughts on them, then I'll happily share it. But yeah, thank you for watching, take care, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!